All right. Let's bring the Queen City Council meeting of Wednesday, July 10th, 2019 to order, please. We have a roll call.
Mayor Forsyth.
Here.
Council President Sheldon Meyer.
Present.
Councilor Alan Montgomery.
Here.
Councilor Duke Wells.
Here.
Councilor Tom Allen.
Here.
Councilor Robert Ford.
Here.
And Councilor Susan Snow is absent and excused.
Thank you. I'll join you in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. That's quick. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
With amended bills
With
of
amended
session
bills of set.
and amended agenda.
That's right.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, they're approved. Announcements, Jamie, would you go through those, please?
The Planning Commission will deliberate on the final plat approval for the Little Wohinge Phase 3 subdivision on Thursday, July 25th at 6 p.m. This will not be a public hearing, however, written testimony may be submitted to City Hall by July 14th, 2019. Central Lincoln PUD announced it will increase its rates by 3% beginning August 1st, 2019. The annual League of Oregon Cities Conference will be held in Bend, September 26th through the 28th. Conference registration open July 1st. And there is an opportunity for individuals and businesses in the city to purchase a spot on the Florence Alpoli game board. Flyers are in your packets about these things.
Do we have any citizen input into any items not on the agenda? Aaron Boyle.
Mayor,
Yes.
before we get started, if Mr. Bowman is going to be speaking on the Little Wohinge issue, are you?
No, it was just actually a question on when the actual due date for the comments from the public, because the original notice went out, and it says on the notice that went out, the 19th of July is the last date to receive comments. And then the agenda it says the 14th of July.
Okay, then that would have been a typo on my part.
And then in reality, we're closed on the Sunday, and we're closed Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So is the real date the 11th, or is it?
It's the 19th, whatever it says in that notice.
So it's the 19th, not what it says on the agenda.
Yeah. And if the office is closed, you can always drop your written comments in the mail slot.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I was going to ask.
Okay,
Clarification on what's the real date.
I was going to offer Bonnie an opportunity to leave if she wanted to.
Oh, no, no, no.
That's what that was all about.
That was all I asked. So it's 19th.
John Cole?
Yeah, that actually answered it right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Hey, we're burning it up.
Yeah.
Is it Corey Harmon?
Sorry.
Oh. I know who you are because you're writing.
It's going to look like we're not burning it up because I'm passing these out, but I'll probably take 5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. There's 2 packets there passed to you, and I'll give one to Jamie, and I have some on the table. Here, Jamie. So I'm on this Ray Hammond. I live in Darling's Loop. I'm on the budget committee. And the reason why I'm talking is because the end of the fiscal year ended last month. So the August report is, the July report is for June, which is the end of the year. And so that's what I'm here for. And my question is, how many of you know how much is in your checking account? I bet you all have a pretty good idea, unless of course your spouse manages it. It's harder to know what your net worth is because depreciation and appreciation changes all the time. I know the book value of my car, the amount I paid for it, but I don't know what the real value is until I sell it. Day-to-day management of personal finance and budgets really is an exercise of cash management. The Dune City Recorder and the mayor signs the checks and manages the money. They make sure the bills are paid according to our strategic goals, the budget. I asked the council members, do you know how much money the city has in its cash accounts? It is my contention that you should. For the last budget year, Jamie has been very gracious in providing me a monthly profit and loss statement by class. Class meaning specific accounts. In my ideal world, all accounts should be reconciled at the end of the month and a monthly report presented to the council. When I first started asking for the reports, Jamie mentioned that sometimes she doesn't have all the money to correctly apply to specific accounts. Because of this, it can take some time past the end of the month to correctly apply money to a specific account. Because of this, it can take some time past the end of the month to fold the money in for the correct information. I told her it was okay. Just send me the monthly reports. I noticed many months ago that Jamie started providing in your monthly packet a profit and loss statement with information about bills being paid. All great stuff. My report is a little different. I'm passing out to you 2 packets, a total of 17 pages. Don't let your eyes get too glossed over. The 3-page packet is the type of profit and loss report that Jamie provides me monthly, except this one is for the fiscal year. The 14-page packet contains 12 monthly reports, a yearly summary of the 12 monthly reports, and a reconciliation copy of the 12-month report and the fiscal year profit loss statement. In the 14-page packet, you'll see items in yellow, red, and black. The yellow information is information that was entered data manually. The red data is negative numbers calculated, some were calculated fields, and others are questions that I had about account entries. The black are all calculated fields. The last sheet is the August report of last July's activity. The third sheet is July's report of June's activity. Looking at the reports at different times, entries were made in an account called unclassified and later correctly applied. 1 month, a revenue check wasn't applied until after the reporting period. So when you look at the reconciliation report, you'll see what accounts were affected. Now the important stuff. Notice all the sheets have a beginning fund balance and an ending fund balance. The beginning balances were gotten from state reporting forms, and the sums should be the amount that Dune City had in cash and cash equivalents at the beginning of the fiscal year last year. So the answer to my question, how much money does the city have in its cash accounts? The answer should be the ending fund balances. How do you check it? You look at your month-end bank statements and make sure that they match. Sometimes, something I did not do, but you should, because it's important for you to understand the process because you are the heads of the community household. And so, if you have any questions about it, I'll be glad to answer. I'm going to send a packet of this copy of PDFs to Jamie so you do it. But just informational, because you should know, you should do this monthly, and you should know what the cash counts are. That's why I would do a monthly report, and the yearly one is just perfect for making, if there's any mistakes in the data or something like that. So, I thank you for your time, and we'll hope that's brief.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to formal complaint section. You want to go over that?
Or you just, you put it in for
It's
us?
in there, and I need direction from the council on what you think might need to be done. I should inform you of the things that have been done already.
Yeah, see the letter that you sent?
Right, the letter should be in there.
It is.
I contacted Department of Environmental Quality, and he did a cursory investigation and determined that it was nothing more than the usual lake turnover at Wahine Lake. He did indicate that from the letter, he said, unless this person has actually seen somebody physically polluting, pouring pollutants into the lake, in which case he needs to know. So I contacted the person who wrote the letter, and indicated that if he saw somebody or saw actions that could be pointed to a specific point source for a pollution, that he needed to contact David Mentallo.
Oh, good, okay. Does anybody else have any questions on that topic? Or comments? All right, hearing none, move on to presentation award.
This was all you thought.
What?
I believe our representative this evening is Bob Piney.
Is Bob there? All right. All right, don't be whiting out the name on this. This is the Central Oregon Coast Amateur Radio Club for providing the most volunteers for the Dune City Triathlon, and we appreciate it very much.
And on behalf of the Central Oregon Coast Amateur Radio Club, thank you for the opportunity. It's great practice for us. We had a lot of fun, and the 23 volunteers enjoyed the event, and we look forward to next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, successful governance. The importance of local government. What do we got?
Earlier, no, it was last month, the city was audited by CIS for our compliance with requirements of CIS for our liability insurance. We failed miserably. And one of the reasons was the fact that you are not getting the training that you are required to get. And so they suggested that we have a training at the beginning of every city council meeting. I mean, we can do it at other times. We're gonna have to, because some of the training is an hour and 2 hours long.
Yeah.
But some of the shorter ones we can do at the beginning of the meeting. I picked out a pretty short one for tonight, or what I thought was gonna be pretty short, so we'll just move forward. Can you see it okay, or?
Not at all.
Well, you can hear it.
Yeah. And looking at this board, I think our retention is will be minimal, but go ahead. Let's do it.
Thanks a lot, Bob.
Hello, I'm Governor Barbara Roberts, former governor of the state of Oregon, and I'm here today to share some thoughts with you. I've held a lot of public offices, from local school board to regional metro government, legislature, secretary of state, governor, and I know from that experience and from my own beliefs how important those offices are and how important that service is. So I want to speak just a little bit about what it means to serve in public office, how important it is, and to remember that we are there as public servants. Our ethics matter, our preparation matters, our commitment matters, and our loyalty to good government matters. This course brings you a very solid foundation in looking at the service that you're about to deliver to your community at whatever level you're serving. We want to avoid the mistakes and the pitfalls that are sometimes made by government officials, not always intentionally, but because they have not prepared themselves to understand the responsibilities, the obligations, the rules, the regulations of a very complex world of serving in public office. So this is going to give you that foundation so that at the end of your time in office, you will be able to look back and know that you were successful in serving your community and in delivering the kind of service they deserve.
Why is local government important? To answer this question, former Governor Barbara Roberts and Portland State University Professor Emeritus and Chair of the Division of Public Administration, Doug Morgan, share their thoughts and expertise.
I think local government is important because it is the government closest to the people. That's the way I always think of it. And in fact, I used to believe that nobody should be able to serve in the legislature till they served on a city council, county commission, school board, regional government board, that was the preparation for doing higher office, and for me it was. I mean, it's where the budgets are put together, it's where the rules and regulations about how a school district operates, how a city operates, how a county operates, all of that, the personnel, the hiring, the firing, the everything that makes a community work happens in those local governments. And they're absolutely vital. And the other piece of it is citizens can see that government. They may not be down in Salem watching the legislature operate. They may not be in Washington, D.C. Certainly from the West Coast, they're probably not watching the federal government operate. But they see their school board operate. They see their county commission and their city council on television and in the newspaper. They know what you're doing, and you better be doing it well.
If you look at the things that are really important to citizens, public safety, schools, parks, infrastructure, all of the utilities, those are all provided by us at the local level. And the citizens end up giving us 40% of the taxes to fund these services. So that really puts a heavy burden on us to make sure that we hold the trust and use the money that the citizens give us with a very high sense of accountability.
In its simplest form, local government is important because of the work it does for its citizens, but even more, it's important because of the work it does with its citizens. Nowhere else in government do citizens have such direct and immediate access and impact than with the local boards, commissions, and councils that provide the services citizens need and care most about. The way in which local government conducts itself significantly impacts the attitudes of the citizens. Let's talk about a very common misconception many newly elected officials and some experienced elected officials have about what their scope of authority allows them to do. Many newly elected officials believe they were elected because the majority of voters agreed with their ideas and the solutions they suggested for various issues. They conclude that they therefore have the authority to begin making the policy changes they suggested during their campaign. Here to share her perspective is Carol Reich, Clackamas River Water District Finance Director.
When board members come in, they run for these offices for a reason. They have a perspective of the district, whether it's a water district or some other district, of what service should be provided, what service is being provided. But when they are elected, they're not representing their perspective. They need to take advantage of all of the training opportunities. They need to take advantage of staff and their expertise and their history with the organization. They need to ask questions and ask more questions if they're not being satisfied. But they also need to know their roles and responsibilities.
The rule of law states that no government agent can act without legal authority. Only the board acting in its official role, with a quorum, and by a majority vote can make legally binding decisions. You, as an individual elected official, have no legal authority to make any decisions or take any action on your own. It is the responsibility of both the elected governing body as a whole and each individual member to know for certain they are acting within the scope of their permissible legal authority. Governing documents such as the federal and state constitutions, state statutes, local ordinances, city charters, executive orders, court decisions, and administrative rules outline what an elected decision-making body may and may not act on. These governing documents not only broadly outline the scope of authority, they also may outline the individual governing body's scope of authority, including where and how a decision can be made, open meeting law requirements, employee and citizen rights of privacy, and a variety of technical due process requirements. We will go over these processes and the Oregon Tort Claims Act in greater detail in Lesson 2, protecting employee and citizen rights. In becoming an elected official, you became more than just an elected representative. You, along with your colleagues, became responsible for the effective governance of your community. So what's the difference between being a representative and being in charge of governance? Representatives are primarily focused on constituent service and policy advocacy. Governance responsibility entails collaboration with fellow members of the elected governing body to take legally binding action, transforming policy advocacy into policy agreements, providing oversight of the organization to efficiently and effectively implement policy goals, ensuring compliance with all federal, state, and local laws, providing community leadership by generating a consensus on what the community needs, can afford, and is willing to support, and acting within the legal limits granted by all governing documents. Now we need to talk about what can happen if you act outside of your legal authority. If you, or the elected governing body as a whole, takes action that is outside of the scope of authority, you will lose the protection of the Oregon Tort Claims Act and face personal responsibility for defending against civil, criminal, and financial liability for lawsuits brought against you. This may sound discouraging, but it's meant to give you additional knowledge so when the time comes to make changes, you are better able to suggest, debate, collaborate, and reach a compromise on solutions based on what you understand will most benefit the citizens you represent and knowing you have the legal authority to do so. So let's review what we've talked about. Local government is important because of the work it does for and with its citizens. Local government provides services citizens both want and need. You, as an elected official, are now part of a decision-making body and have no legal authority to take action on your own. The rule of law states no government agent can act without legal authority. Legal authority comes from documents such as the Constitution, state or local statute, charters, ordinance, executive order, court decision, or administrative rule. Once you know the governing body has legal authority to make a decision, you must follow a specific process to make a decision and take legal action. We'll conclude with this thought. Your time in office should be spent educating yourself about how local government works and building and maintaining the trust of the citizens. Local government maintains a higher level of trust and legitimacy above many state and federal governments because citizens have access to their local decision makers. Local citizens and advocacy groups assume that there will be open and accessible processes of engagement when they become unhappy or disaffected. Poorly run local government results in declining confidence and trust in democratic governance in general, often escalating into a downward spiral from which it may take years to recover.
That's it for Molly.
Jamie, is this available to us online that we
Yes.
can get to?
Yeah, but I'd have to give you, I'd have to find out how many people can sign up and get their own account.
Exactly. Would you please let me know? All right, now we're going to, this evening we have a public hearing on an application for a conditional use permit to make a property line adjustment as applied for by Ms. Doris Pearson. These proceedings will be recorded. The hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and the state of Oregon. This is a type 3 quasi judicial procedure. Staff will identify and that's going to be a good evening. Applicable substantive criteria which have been listed on the staff report. These are the criteria the city council must be used in making their decisions. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards this criteria and other criteria which you believe apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city and parties involved and the opportunity to respond to the issues would preclude an appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Any party interested in a land use matter may challenge the qualification of any counselor to participate in such hearing and decision. Such challenge must state facts relied upon by the party relating to the counselor's bias, prejudgment, conflict of interest, or other facts, which the challenging party has concluded that the counselor will not make a decision in an impartial manner. Does any member of the public wish to challenge the counselor's impartiality? Seeing none. Does any counselor wish to declare a conflict of interest, bias, or ex parte contact? None. Hearing none. I will now close the regular meeting of July 10th of City Council and open a public hearing for conditional use permit. It is 6:25, let's say. Staff report, please.
Okay. You should all have copies in your packets of a multi-page document that was the staff report and findings of fact staff prepared for the Planning Commission meeting on June 27th. In that are listed each of the applicable criteria and staff's findings for this application, and I'd be happy to go through each of those if you have any questions, or specific ones if you have questions on those. Just in summary, the Planning Commission reviewed the staff report in its meeting on June 27th in a Type 3 public hearing. Background information, Ms. Pearson's tax lot 300 is 0.23 acres in size, and tax lot 400 is 0.57 acres in size. She is asking for a conditional use permit approval so that she can make a property line adjustment to combine both of those smaller lots into one lot that would total 0.8 acres in size. This is a permissible action, provided that the conditional use permit is approved and issued to her. The Planning Commission held its Type 3 public hearing on Ms. Pearson's application. During the hearing, the Commission reviewed all of the applicable criteria relevant to the application submission requirements and the standards and conditions of approval. The public hearing was duly noticed by public notice published in the Siuslaw News, posted at City Hall, the Westlake Post Office, and on the subject property. 2 city residents requested information about the application prior to the public hearing, but there was no testimony, written or oral, either in favor of or opposed to the application presented at the public hearing. The Planning Commissioners voted unanimously to approve the staff report and findings as presented, and to recommend that the City Council approve the application with one condition of approval. And that condition of approval is, within 15 days of final recording with the county, the applicant shall submit to the city a paper copy of the recorded final property line adjustment. This must occur prior to the issuance of any building permits on the reconfigured lots.
Thank you. Does any councilors have any questions for Rapunzel? If not, we'll be taking testimony of all those who wish to testify. If you've not already done so, please sign up. Do we have anybody?
No, we do not.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody on the diocese have any specific questions for the applicant? No. Any testimony in favor? None. The application may, the applicant may request that the record be held open for additional written evidence, arguments, and testimony. Does any applicant desire to hold this open?
There have been no requests.
No request. All right, I'll be closing the what do we call it? I'm sorry.
Public
Hearing. Yep, public hearing. Closing the public hearing at 6:36. Deliberation. Anything? Anybody have questions? Discussions? We can, the actions that we take are we can approve the use permit without conditions or approval. We can approve the condition use permit with conditions of approval recommended by the Planning Commission, and we can approve and/or we can approve the conditional use permit with other conditions of approval determined by the council. I believe that what we've heard is that the Planning Commission would like us to approve the conditional use permit with that one condition. That's what I heard.
I would make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit, provided that, that one stipulation on page 7-7, within 15 days of final recording with the county, the applicant shall submit to the city a paper copy of the recorded final property line adjustment. So I think that's reasonable.
Yes. I hear a second. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it's approved. Thank you. We have another public hearing. This evening we have a public hearing on an application for a variance to build a deck extension within the riparian zone as applied for by Dan Wolfe Construction LLC. These proceedings will be recorded. The hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and the state of Oregon. This is a type 3 quasi-judicial procedure. Staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria which have been listed in your staff report. These are the criteria the city must use in making this decision. All testimony and evidence must be directed towards these criteria and or criteria which you believe apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the city and parties involved in the opportunity to respond to this issue would preclude an appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Any party interested in the land use matter may challenge the qualifications of any counselor and participant in such hearing and decision. Such challenge must state facts relied upon by the party relating to the counselor's bias, prejudgment, conflict of interest, or other facts in which the challenging party has concluded that the counselor will not make a decision or an impartial manner. That is, does any member of the public wish to challenge a counselor's impartiality?
I have received a written letter.
Should we read that? This is from Dan Wolfe Construction LLC. To whom it may concern, I understand that that in compliance with new city rules and bylaws, Councilor Mellon will recuse from any discussion or vote on the matter with the Gary Ring project presented by Dan Wolfe from Wolfe Construction LLC, and I specifically request that he do so. Thank you. Does any counselor wish to declare a conflict of interest, bias, or ex parte contact?
Myself, I don't know Gary Ream and certainly have no issues with him at all. I have pending litigation personally with Dan Lofi and with Dan Lofi Construction. Therefore, I would wish to be recused also with regard to the Reed project.
Thank you. I will now close the regular meeting of the July 10th City Council and open a public hearing on the variance application. It is 6:35. Could we please have staff report?
Certainly. So again, attached to this memorandum that I'll refer to is the complete staff report that was presented to the Planning Commission with the various applicable criteria for construction in the riparian zone and for variances to do so. And again, I'd be happy to go through any of those findings individually or all of them in detail if you like. Also, I can summarize reading from my prepared memo. So the application is for variance from Daniel Lofi on behalf of his client who wishes to build a deck extension that would encroach into the riparian zone, which is the 50-foot setback area from the shoreline of Woheen Lake. The applicant's lot is a non-conforming lot of record in an approved subdivision as platted in 1965. The lot is steeply sloped and less than 1 acre in size. And the existing dwelling on the lot, which was built in 1973 with exterior decks, may have encroached into the 50-foot shoreline area at the time it was built. We don't know for sure, but it is currently encroaching. Most lots in the neighboring area are less than 1 acre in size, which makes it difficult to comply with local and state setback requirements for riparian areas. Approval of a variance application is required because the proposed project, a deck extension on an existing dwelling, encroaches into the riparian zone by about 9 feet, a violation of Dune City Code, which prohibits placement of structures or impervious surfaces, including fences, decks, etc. State code also governs setbacks and activities in the riparian area, and state code is included in our city code. City code also provides the city council shall be the approving authority for applications for variances to the riparian corridor area provisions. City code stipulates in part the variance procedures provide relief from specific code provisions when they have the unintended effect of preventing reasonable development in conformance with all other codes. The standards for non-conforming uses and development are intended to provide some relief from code requirements for older developments that do not comply. City code further stipulates that a variance application shall be processed by a type 3 quasi-judicial procedure with public hearings at both the Planning Commission and the City Council. The Planning Commission held its type 3 public hearing on June 27th, during which the Commission reviewed all of the applicable criteria relevant to the application requirements and the criteria for approval. The public hearing was duly noticed by public notice published in the Siuslaw News, posted at City Hall, Westlake Post Office, and on the subject property. Prior to the hearing, one resident requested information about the application and expressed some concern over the project's possible impact on neighbors' water lines that run through the subject property. There was no other testimony, written or oral, either in favor of or opposed to the application presented during the Planning Commission public hearing. Following discussion and deliberation, the Planning Commission voted with 2 votes in favor and 1 opposed to approve 1 condition of approval recommended by staff. And that condition was, an applicant must submit what's called a no state permit required application to DSL and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and then provide the city with a copy of the approved application before a city building permit will be issued. In addition to the above condition, the Planning Commission also voted with 2 votes in favor and 1 opposed to amend the staff report and findings presented to the Planning Commission by adding the following conditions of approval. Contractor is to identify, mark, and protect the neighbor's water lines during construction. Notify the 3 water line owners when work on the project is slated to start and when it is slated to finish. And further, to assume responsibility for any damage to the water lines. Finally, the Planning Commission voted with 2 votes in favor and 1 opposed to approve the variance application with the conditions of approval just listed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Rapunzel? We'll be taking testimony from all those who wish to testify. If you have not already done so, please sign in. Do we have any?
Yes, Jim's.
We do.
And John Pollock.
Concerning the 3 water lines, that's what I'm kind of representing myself and 2 other neighbors. Because of the steep terrain, there's elbows with the PVC that are really, really dainty, and that all of us were concerned about just really construction stuff happening within the it's about 10 foot from the proposed deck, and our concern was not breaking the darn pipes. That's really where bottom line is, just trying to protect that because it's they're all PVC and they're dainty. That's it.
Thank you.
Can we ask a question?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, John? Anybody have a question for John?
Yes, sure.
Please.
The recommendations from the planning commission that they take credit for any damage, is that satisfactory to you?
It is. It is satisfactory. Thank you. Any other?
Anybody else?
I had the same kind of pipe, so I understand.
Yeah.
Where you're at.
Yeah. It's a little flaky, to say the least.
Would anybody like to testify in opposition of this movement? Is the applicant here?
No.
Okay. All right, then we will close the public hearing at, okay, now I can't see the clock at all. 6:44?
We need to limit over.
Yeah, right. Or a non-blurred one. All right, deliberation, any questions? Again, we have the option to approve the variance without conditions of approval. We have the option to approve the variance with conditions. We have the option of approving the variance with other conditions. And we have the option, of course, to deny the variance. Any discussion on the matter, please?
Is that for the council?
Yes.
Okay, then I do have some questions.
Sure.
The problem is I'm not sure who to address them to, but I will.
It's our discussion.
I'll state them. And first of all, I'm of 2 minds on this.
on the one hand, I don't particularly like the idea of going into riparian lands. At the same time, it seems like if I understand this correctly, there are some reasonable reasons for doing so. And a deck, from my experience, doesn't do very much in terms of changing water flow. Water just goes around the small foundation tubes. However, I don't fully understand, first of all, the need. I did understand that it's an exit, a fire exit, I believe, or something of that sort, but I don't have, and I've looked through the pictures, I don't see one that helps me a lot with that. And secondly, it doesn't appear to me, I'm looking at this photograph, which is, I assume, a satellite photo with the overlaid red and yellow lines. And I'm looking at the white line that shows 41 feet where there's already an encroachment on the 50-foot setback. But looking at what appears to be a curving water line, it doesn't look to me like there's much more. In other words, this is not going straight out toward the water as far as I can tell. It's going kind of sideways. And it doesn't look like it goes much, I guess 9 feet more is what I read. I guess the point being, assuming this is necessary for the habitability of the land, I'm not opposed to it. I also don't see that it has a great impact. On the other hand, I think we should tread carefully on anything that encroaches into land that should be protected to the extent that we can protect it.
I agree.
That's all. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I address the concern? It was confusing, and I thank Mr. Caldwell for explaining to the Planning Commission. None of the current decks touch the ground.
All right.
They're only accessible from the house.
Oh,
And so
okay.
the idea is to put in a part that can
I see.
provide escape in the event of fire.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I don't see where it encroaches, the encroachment that will be made from looking at the plans that Lofty submitted here is going to have any impact on the water quality, and it looks like it's going to increase the livability of this home substantially. And I personally am in favor of approval with conditions.
Anyone else?
It looks like, yeah, there's just 10, 20 square feet in the riparian zone. Most of it's out. The one concern, of course, this is being engineered, but that comes in the building stage, right? So we don't have to worry about that. So I make a motion for approval with the Planning Commission's conditions.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I just note that it looks like the Planning Commission has had a lot of work to do, and it's much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That one didn't look easy.
No.
All right, goal setting, we're having a conversation.
As you will recall, you guys, that should have
That
calendar.
they don't have.
They don't? Nope. Just to remind you that you said you wanted to set a goal-setting session for
Right.
further, more expanded discussion
Exactly.
in July.
Yep.
So we pick a day.
Those of you that have commitments and work, what's good for you?
any day?
Personally, I'm freer during the summer
Okay.
because I'm not over at the school till late in the afternoon. So I'm relatively, most
Well,
days, I'm flexible.
Tuesdays are bad for me.
Tuesday?
Or bad?
Bad Tuesdays, okay. I think I remember that movie.
Yeah.
It does, yeah. So Tuesdays, we try to keep out from Tuesdays, okay. I myself am pretty flexible with all of this. Bob, afternoons are not good, or
During the summer, they're fine.
they're fine?
Yeah.
Regardless, okay.
Yeah.
Sheldon?
Yeah, on most open. Wednesdays are probably good ones for me.
Wednesdays are good? All right.
Later is better.
Later better than early?
We'll work till the sun goes down, so.
You do what?
Work till the sun goes down,
Oh.
later's better.
Oh, yeah.
But it doesn't matter
I
terribly.
can say, wait a minute, that's 8 or 9 o'clock now. We're not coming in there.
No, no.
Okay, what do you got? Anybody? Anybody have a preference?
I'd be
Wednesday?
open to a breakfast meeting or
How early do you like to eat breakfast?
about 10 o'clock.
That's enough.
Oh, you mean lunch?
Yeah, that's right. Wait a minute. And you prefer Wednesdays, Sheldon?
That's, yeah. I try to keep Tuesday and Thursday mornings open to play tennis.
Okay, well, that's important.
I thought Wednesday was golf day.
Not for
Okay.
a little while, no.
Still a little damp up. Okay, that's PM. How about Wednesday, the 24th
Yep.
July.
of July? Time?
Anytime's fine with me. I think Alan, you would, 4 o'clock? Is that too early?
That's quite early, yes.
Too early?
Yeah, just after second lunch. 6, is that okay?
It's fine to me. I'm good.
Where?
Here?
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock PM. 24th? All right, we'll see what we can get done on that. We'll probably have another one as well, but that'll take care of us to get started anyway. All right, moving on. Consideration of a request for participation of the city in maintenance project on Ocean Boulevard.
I would like everyone to make sure that you have the packet in front of you. I'm going to refer to it. We'll start by looking at the pictures.
I like those.
As you can see, we had kind of a catastrophe with a complete collapse of a retaining wall along Ocean Boulevard.
Oh, yes.
Which is currently could potentially cause problems for the city because it's in the right of way for passage through.
Okay.
That sort of thing.
How recently, Jamie, did this happen?
When did this happen, Fred?
June 21st.
June 21st?
Thank you.
The remainder of the wooden wall is still up, and I use that term loosely because it has been leaning. Also, in your packets, did you guys see these? And do you have the agreement? A copy of the agreement?
The LUBA agreement?
Yeah, the settlement agreement?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm not sure what the history behind the situation was. I know there's a story that goes with it. I've heard the story before. But apparently it ended up in a situation where there was a settlement agreement entered into between the city and the property owner.
Right, looks like back in '94.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, July of 1994. And I'm hoping that you have all had a chance to read this.
Sure.
It was also amended slightly by way of a letter from attorneys for.
Maybe I need to have a copy.
You don't have a picture of the parent letter, the Nicholson letter?
Yeah. Okay, I got one, Jamie.
Oh, okay. And I asked that this come before you because the estimate for repair in a manner that would be more permanent than putting another bunch of wood up there and causing a problem for a future council. Costs would probably, are estimated between $4,000 and $5,000. And that's mainly for acquisition of the rocks, like the blocks like were put on King Road. And the question as to who is responsible for paying for the repairs needs to be answered.
Jamie, it looks to me, and although it's not clear what exactly the finances, it's not clear at all what the finances were, but it looks to me like this was a shared arrangement at the time, back in '94. Is that, am I reading this right?
The way I read it, and somebody who can correct me if I'm wrong, it was the city was to do the work and the property owner was to reimburse the city on a payment plan. And so you see the payment plan. And I believe Mr. Hilden would like to, I mean, it is his property. So
Is that your pleasure, Fred?
That would be my one.
Yeah. Fred, come on, tell us what you got.
I apologize for not having this ready before to make it into mine.
Oh, thank you.
There should be 8 copies there. It's been a while since I've sat in this chair.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Fred.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors and staff, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to appear before you. Basically, I'm going to read the letter that I prepared into the record. Dear Mayor, it's dated July 9th. Dear Mayor and City Council, on Friday, June 21st, 2019, the retaining wall on Ocean Boulevard adjacent to our property failed and collapsed into the street. We immediately notified the city administrator by phone at her home as City Hall was closed for the weekend. We then cleaned up the debris that presented an immediate hazard for traffic on this relatively lightly traveled city street. We also placed 3 orange traffic cones to warn drivers and pedestrians, photo attached. We purchased this property in 1999, and from all the information we've been able to find, the retaining wall was built by the city shortly after the section of Ocean Boulevard adjacent to our property was paved about 1994. From what we've been able to ascertain, there's quite a backstory to the street paving and retaining wall. Clearly, the retaining wall is required to prevent our property from sloughing off onto the pavement, and its current condition is both a traffic and pedestrian hazard. It is our intention to fully cooperate with the city in replacing it. It is worth noting that approximately half the length of the wall has failed, but is only reasonable that the remainder is not far behind and should be replaced at the same time the failed section is rebuilt. thank you for accepting our testimony on this matter. Sincerely, Fred and Kelly Hilden, owners.
Thank you, Fred. Anybody have questions for Fred?
Yes. Could you, I mean, this is obviously something none of us were around for at the time, so we clearly don't have all the details, but can you just explain what your feeling is as to where the responsibilities lie for this, and a little bit of background on why?
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Orr. I became aware of this situation shortly after purchasing the property. It was not really disclosed to me when I bought it, but I was aware of Ocean Boulevard running, the paved portion of Ocean Boulevard running across in front of the property. So, it was what it was. Once I think it was probably 2002, maybe 2 or 3 years after my deceased wife and I purchased the property, I discovered the agreement that Jamie has put in your packets that was written between Dune City, at the time Mayor Robert Petersdorf, and the then property owners Richard Parent and Gloria Smith. The backstory, a little highlight of the backstory is that portion of Ocean Boulevard immediately adjacent to our property had never been paved. It was beach all the way across the front of the property. The pavement ended at the edge of our property line. After a dispute between the property owner and the mayor, it's alleged, and this is strictly hearsay, it's alleged that the mayor decided to demonstrate that was in fact city right-of-way and not private property, and decided to pave across it to continue Ocean Boulevard from the edge of our property across the front of it to Laurel Avenue, which is where the cul-de-sac is at the end of the street down by the post office. That area where the paving is well within the riparian setback and well below the 12-foot high water mark for Silk Goose Lake. So having been part of the Planning Commission and later, of course, becoming the city recorder and city administrator, I kind of have observed this whole thing, and it's been a very kind of a tenuous issue. It's been something that I've given a lot of thought to, but never really had a whole lot of gumption one way or the other to go after. If you read the agreement carefully, it basically stipulates that the city has, in the Luba settlement, because Parent and Smith filed a Luba suit, took the city to Luba and Land Use Board of Appeals, because the street was encroaching in below the 12-foot high water mark of Silk Goose Lake and into the riparian area. As part of the Luba suit agreement, the way you read that, the settlement agreement, is that the city gave up all but the paved portion of that right-of-way. So now all that does is complicate the matter of whose responsibility is the retaining wall. So clearly, there has to be some kind of a retaining wall, as I pointed out in my letter, to keep the property that I own from sloughing off into the city's pavement and creating a traffic hazard and a pedestrian hazard. That's the best I can tell you, Councilor.
Okay. Thank you.
And I guess the other thing I'd like to comment is that's the fairest representation I can give you of the backstory.
Okay.
I've heard the story, he's right.
And is this wall, you said something about it being paved over, what kind of earth material is underneath the pavement?
I'm sure it's got some kind of a rock base under the pavement.
Okay.
It's sand.
That's what I thought I heard you say.
Way back when, like in the early 1900s, that whole area was at one point kind of a gulf on the lake. And it was created it was filled before Westlake was platted in 1950, which is crazy. That's beyond my scope of comprehension.
So the reason I ask that is because, and I assume that this has been looked at, but we would want to make sure that whatever retaining wall is put in is on ground that isn't going to
Yeah,
subsequently give way.
that's a very good point.
And
You know, it is a sand base, but I'm sure the road, based on what I've observed over the 20 years I've owned the property, the road appears to be pretty well built,
Okay.
because there's been no deterioration in the pavement anywhere, and it's 25 years old.
Good.
Fred, how long is, what's the distance on that property?
It's, my property is about almost 200 feet across the face, and the retaining wall portion that needs to be repaired is probably in the neighborhood of 180 feet long.
Okay.
170 to 180, I guess I should have put a tape on it.
Fred, I have a question. In your letter dated July 9th, you state that the retaining wall adjacent to our property failed. Adjacent to, so I'm assuming you don't own that property. But then in the last paragraph, you say clearly the retaining wall is required to prevent our property from sloughing off. I'm trying to determine, do you own this wall? Is it on your property?
That's a bit nebulous, Commissioner. I appreciate the question, and I guess that's kind of where I was going in response to Councilor Orr's question. It's technically on city right-of-way. To answer your question pointedly, it is on city right-of-way.
Go ahead.
I'm familiar with that, Fred. I've been down there. To me, it is concluded, you know, there's a lot going on, a lot of backstory there. I am aware of that. Then and there, I'm aware of what government was here at Dune City at the time.
Right.
And to me, what it is the pavement isn't going up onto your property, the sand's coming down onto the pavement. That needs to be replaced down there. The wood was never going to hold up for any long period of time. To me, we're responsible for that roadway. We need to keep that roadway clean for traffic and for pedestrians. To me, the responsibility to keep that wall maintained is the city's, and that's where I stand on it.
If I'm reading this right, the city sold,
What was that?
the city
Mayor?
sold that portion from the asphalt. If I'm reading this old document, we agreed to that area that you're talking about to be back in the,
1994.
yeah, the 94
The
thing.
agreement, the new settlement stipulated that the city was essentially giving up the right-of-way.
Right, so the normal setback from an end of pavement to there goes away because that property is now owned by you, or them back in the time, owned by you.
Right.
Okay.
And Jamie, what does it stipulate in the settlement about the west side setback?
That there will be no shoulder at the west side of the road, although the retaining wall is on the west side.
Right.
My point is that you have a berm there, 3-4 feet? Is that-
It varies in height from probably a foot to 3 foot.
Yeah, and there was an attempt at one time to make a tire barricade through there.
Right. That was kind of, I think, the initial step that was taken before the city.
And then they put the wooden one up.
Yeah.
My whole point is that the city went in and put a paved road where there was a sandy beach with a slope that was not, they had to make this cut in there to enable the city to put that paved road in there.
Yep.
And by doing so, to me, they resumed this responsibility to keep that road clean. That's my point.
Who put the wood wall in? Was it the property owner?
The settlement stipulates that the city built it, and the property owner, at that time, at least what the settlement agreement says, agreed to reimburse the city.
Was that Dick Parent?
Yes, Dick Parent, Gloria Smith. And I have, Councilor Mellon, I have no knowledge of whether or not there was any reimbursement done. If it had been on me, and watching a wood wall go in, especially one that was constructed this way, everybody knows that when you build a retaining wall, you put structures in the ground to hold it in place, and whatever is gonna retain the material behind it goes behind that. Well, this wall was actually built, if you look at some of the pictures carefully, you can see that the posts were put in and the boards were attached to the face of it. So they're not even behind the posts. And if I had been the property owner, I certainly wouldn't have reimbursed the city for that.
They were too small to start with, and there should have been dead men on that too, to hold that back.
Yep.
And not wood.
Yeah.
So,
20 years,
I just think
Yeah,
that
maybe
25.
25
our
years.
road, we're responsible for keeping it clean.
Any other thoughts?
What was the idea? Was it just gonna be a form and concrete pour or stacked block?
No, you said
Stacked block, I think that would look good.
too high. So it makes it about 4 feet.
Yeah.
Make it 4 feet?
If they were gonna do something like that, Fred, would that be something that you'd wanna have an access through there, a step or something? While they're doing it?
probably.
Yeah. Knowing the area, I think access would be the time to do that.
Right. The day after this happened, on the 22nd, I guess it would be Saturday, the city's road inspector, Richard Palmer, came on site and we talked about it at the time, talked about 2 foot by 6 foot stacked blocks, and there's a couple options, that need to be looked at. It doesn't,
It just keep folks from just going over it anywhere and kind
Yep.
of traffic it, through there, is what it looked like to me.
Mr. Palmer is here if you need to ask him any questions. I'm not sure I got the
Is-
price right.
Is there a pathway through there, a street or anything, or just access, this is on your property?
the existing retaining wall was a solid wall. There's a gate at one end that the retaining wall would not need to go past because it's only, there's only maybe a 4 or 5 inch difference in elevation at that point. And however, Councilor Wells' point about having access down in front of the retaining, or down through the retaining wall, is a very good point, because that's something that we would certainly like.
Just seem like keep people from going over anywhere.
Yep.
But that's just for you and the RV park,
Yep.
not a street? Okay.
So if the question is who's gonna build the wall or who's gonna pay for the wall,
Right.
Yes.
we need to determine who owns the ground, I guess, under the wall.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I'm not
Exactly.
sure, do we have anything?
Yeah.
It looks like in the settlement agreement, the number 1, section B, the Parent and Smith, is that right?
Eric Smith, yes.
Parent Smith agreed to reimburse the city for installation. It looks like they took possession of it at that point.
And it also says cement retaining wall.
That obviously wasn't done.
No.
Well, it was amended by the.
It was amended by
Yeah, there's another
this
page.
section.
It was the proverbial cluster.
To me, the part that's it's not just whose land that wall is on, but going back to what Councilor Wells, what you were saying, it's that road. I mean, I'm torn here because that road, ordinarily I would say, yeah, that's the homeowner's responsibility. When the home and the property exist and then the city decides to put a road in next to it, to me that changes the equation some. And I remain torn in terms of whose responsibility it is, but it's not as clear cut to me in terms of the owner being responsible as it would in a different situation where the homeowner perhaps built the property next to the road. Then to me it's clear the homeowner's responsibility to keep the dirt off the road. But in this case, the home came first, if I understand this correctly, and then the road.
That's correct.
And that presents a different picture.
I have a question for Mr. Palmer. Is the road at present, before the sand on it, of course, still a 16-foot blacktop surface
Yes. It's roughly that, yes, 60.
with no shoulder
On that side.
on the west side?
No. No shoulder on the west side, modest, almost no shoulder on the east side.
And are normal roads sizes
All over the board.
all over the board?
It's worthy to note that that's a one-way street.
Excellent.
So it's only one, expected to be one lane
One way.
wide.
It's extremely sufficient.
One of those. Okay. Sheldon, you haven't said anything,
Well, I always, you know,
but I thought I smelled something.
hesitant to agree with Duke. It seems to me as though the issue comes down to, it's our road and we need to keep the road passable. And there needs to be some sort of a retaining wall in there. I think that it might behoove us to build that with the understanding that if you're gonna add some fancy steps and those kinds of things to get in and out, that might be something you would like to contribute to. But I do think the responsibility of keeping a road and passable is the city's responsibility.
I'm kind of leaning towards 50-50, and, well, I'm conflicted, but
I was thinking 50-50 too, but then that one thing about the city having added the road after the fact, that weighs heavily on me.
well, would you be okay with 50-50?
There's a loaded question.
That's a really loaded question.
Yes.
And my concern too is there was no road there
Right.
when all this was happening, then a road became there.
Right.
But it was there when you bought it.
No.
No, it was not.
wasn't, well, it was there when I bought it, but that's kind of irrelevant now.
It wasn't a paved road.
Right,
I mean,
No, it was,
when all this started, it wasn't a paved road.
right.
It was
Oh, okay.
Well, and few people realize it, but the Ocean Boulevard right-of-way goes all the way from the intersection of Laurel at that corner where the turnaround is, all the way over to the Westlake Boat Ramp. There's a 50-foot right-of-way across there. I
like,
didn't know that. but-
like so many of the
Unvacated road.
unvacated roads throughout the city, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I think we do have to consider is that this decision will impact the future.
Yes.
And once it's on record that the city, I mean, right now, it's not entirely clear, but if we go on record as saying this is our responsibility, then it's ours forever.
Sure. I think the difference with this one versus future one is that the past legal designates, that takes away our setbacks or anything from the road. I think it would be kind of unusual to find that on other properties. Of course, nothing surprises me with some of this older stuff that's here. But, so I'm not too concerned with it.
If it was a flat piece of ground and we were wanting to build a wall or something, that way it'd be on the property. But that, you have a slope, that was a gradual slope to the lake, and then the city went and put a road through, which created a berm, and that berm is coming into the road.
I would like, though, to make the point that if the city decides to take this on, that doesn't mean that we take it on if the property owner then decides to do something different behind that wall. In other words, if you were to decide to put up a nice grassy mound that goes 6 feet above the wall or something of that sort, that to me negates whatever responsibility we've taken on, or it could.
I think I speak. No. Yes, we do.
I mean, there's only so much we can do there because of what runs the entire length of that property.
Right, yeah, there's many other considerations. We would be more than happy to sign any kind of a waiver that you would require in that regard.
Okay.
And to address another question, and I'm sure I speak for both property owners,
You weren't, you are now, right?
anything that we would want to do to enhance the retaining wall to address Councilor Montgomery's concerns would be on our nickel.
Okay. Fair enough.
And where, Jamie, does this fit into the budget if we were to do this?
It means that other things have to go away, because we
Exactly.
have a pretty tight road budget. I mean, we
Yeah.
planned ahead. It's
Yeah, okay.
That was going to be my only question of staff, is whether there was any road contingency money.
Mhm.
So just to clarify this, I don't think I made myself clear. When you bought the property in 99, the road and the retaining wall were there, correct?
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Correction on the price, 12 to 15,000.
Oh, that's a sizable correction.
Blocks, we were originally talking about.
Guys, there's 136 feet, okay? It's 6-foot blocks. You need about 43 blocks. There is a little stretch there, and I don't remember.
Yeah, it
Fred and I
seems to-
walked it, it's 1 foot.
Yeah, it looks like it goes
One
down.
block high, and then
Right.
it'll go. Now, I haven't called to check on our price of blocks, but last time our price of blocks went all over with Knife River. We're around $135 and $140 a block. That's just buying the block.
And how many did you say it was going to take for?
You're like 43. So you're looking at a round figure, $6,000 just for the block. You gotta take out what's there. You got a lot of material to move.
You gotta put it there.
You've gotta build a bed, stack the blocks, keep everything level and nice. There's a jog in it, one long section, I don't know, I'm gonna say it's probably 75 feet or so straight, around 80 foot straight, and then it kind of makes a little bend. Now the problem with the blocks, you don't make bends with these. But I explained to Fred that we could and do some creative concrete work and some rock finish to make it all look right. But if he wants to put in a step and access point, maybe that would be the place to step it, put in an opening steps and go on, or something like that.
One of the other things that we would be more than pleased with, Richard, is if the blocks were not, if they were just stacked one on top of the other and not cross-hatched. The retaining wall using the blocks that you've talked about are the sample on Keachley Road. They're laid like you do brickwork.
You have to though, in order, because here's the other thing in a nutshell, you gotta, the pictures don't really show you, and this is where I got concerned when I saw this thing. I mean, it wasn't just a simple slap up the wall deal.
Sure.
You've got a lot of force behind here. Over the time, it's pretty evident to see that Fred's lot has been filled. Okay, this deal has been made level, it's been filled. It's not natural by any means with the ground of the road is on. So now when you put these blocks up there, and the reason I suggested these blocks, because we can go too high without engineering. But they're engineered to be overlapped, locked together, that's what gives you the strength. If you set two blocks just on top of each other, you got no strength, nothing to retain it. You just have individual dominoes that'll fall out.
Okay.
So they have to be locked. Well, there's a lot of pressure up here on top of this little thing. And so there was a lot of concerns when I saw it. So I came back and told Jamie what I had found and some of my concerns with this deal. I mean, it's not just a cut and dry, simple little deal. It kind of needs to be done right. Then this paperwork was found. I read this paperwork. I thought it was pretty nicely neat paperwork. It was simple enough that I could read it. It was of how all this came to be. I kept hearing all these stories, and I'm kind of two ways on this thing. It's pretty cut and dry where it says the city would do it, the people reimbursed them, then it became their property, the city was out of it. But just like Fred stated, while it says in there from the lawyer deal, how they decided to go with the wood because it was cheaper. Well, that's fine, but it was installed, wrong. But it's been there for 20 years. You got the life expectancy of pressure treated wood.
That's right.
I
don't, the dollar amount is significant, but I don't see that the dollar amount changes any of the discussion.
No, not to me.
Anything that we've talked about is still, regardless of the dollar amount, is it relevant, one way or the other. Anybody else, any further? Anybody ready to vote on this? If so, make a motion.
Well, I would make a motion that we split the cost, but I don't think we got the votes. But I'll make the motion that we split the cost with the property owners.
Do I hear a second?
I second that.
Discussion?
50-50.
What was the second, I'm sorry? Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. I'm going to abstain on this one for a minute. I'm still thinking. Is there? Wait, where did we end up with the vote? Oh, that was not a roll call vote though, right?
No.
So you had
2 fours.
2 for, 2 against.
And 2 against, which kicks it, if you abstain, kicks it to the mayor to make the decision.
All right. I'll do that.
All right. I'll have to go with a nay on that.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Do you want to make another motion?
Sure.
That motion failed.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion that the city pay the cost with the exception of any enhancements like steps that have been discussed that would be the responsibility of the property owner.
I'll second that.
Could we get those tires out of there while we're doing this? It's terrible.
Yeah, they don't belong.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will get Marshall, I just call Kelly now.
Yeah.
All
right.
No.
Thank you.
2 months.
Yeah, really. Consideration of appointment of applicant to the Planning Commission, Rod Vint. Is Rod here tonight?
He is not.
He is not. All right. You have his background and such in your pamphlets or in your package. Any questions about Rod that anybody wants to ask that's not on his background sheets?
He is related to Susan Snow, is that correct?
That is correct.
In what way?
He is her brother.
Oh, okay.
He administered that?
You can't do that, she's not here.
Yeah.
It only works when she's here.
You can't take that.
That's right. Do we have a motion or any other further discussion on Rod joining the planning commission?
You're here. Sounds wonderful. He's an engineer and
Yeah.
Overqualified.
Yeah.
I move that we approve Rod Vint as planning commission.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Consideration of appointment to Water Quality Committee, Aaron Bowen. Is Aaron here tonight? You are. Please come up. Hello. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Aaron Bowen. I moved here in 2014 in the early spring, late winter, and retired in 2010. My background is 30 years in aerospace industry, large company, and it was program management.
Okay.
At the last 10 years was actually program management. Kind of worked my way up from bellboy to PM. And I worked with companies from different parts of the world, France, Switzerland, Germany, places like that in our programs. And I enjoy anything that has to do with water. I lived the last 10 years before I retired on a sailboat, and then cast my lines off and went cruising. And didn't ever want to come back on land, but then you get married and you discover that life wasn't all that much fun out there at sea anyway. So anyway, I've been spending most of my time here, enjoying this beautiful place, and I've been participating in the water testing with Jerry and the crew. And in fact, when Jerry's ready to stop using his boat, I got one. I would love it. We'll use that one instead. And then I understand we're looking at perhaps doing some more testing on Silk Goose as well. And I can totally boat over there just as easily. So basically, anything to do to get on the water, I'm there.
Anybody have any questions for her?
Yeah, what kind of sailboat did you?
Bob Perry designed 40-foot bob.
Thank you.
New stern, solar panels, wind generator, water maker.
Thank you.
Ready to go.
All right, how about any pertinent questions?
Oh, sorry.
That was pertinent, I thought.
Oh, that was very pertinent.
I would move approval of assigning Aaron Bowen to the Water Quality Committee.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Aaron, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you very much.
participating.
Thank you.
Consideration of appointment for water testers.
Something to do with it.
Steve, is it, I'm sorry, Safan?
I don't know, I didn't.
No?
I think it's Giovanni, and he's not here.
Okay. And James McDonald, both, right?
And James is not here, and he has not yet actually submitted his application.
Oh, he hasn't?
He intended to, but didn't get it.
All right.
He is our water meter reader. You've met James.
Oh, okay.
Approve it anyway.
We'll approve him anyway, put him on table.
I move that we approve Steve for the water sample collection.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Steve's now on. Appointment of council member to City Enterprise Risk Management Team.
Is this the one I'm volunteering for?
Yes, sir.
I volunteer for that.
I second that.
I doubt there's gonna be any fight on that.
Yeah.
That's how it works around here.
And why don't you tell us a little bit about what this is?
Yeah,
Me? Because Duke doesn't know.
I don't know.
You just know you volunteered for it.
Yeah.
He was told to volunteer for it.
Right.
We, in addition to being audited by FEMA,
Uh-huh.
we are also audited by CIS, which is the county, Coast Insurance Services. It's the city, county, municipal insurance company, provides insurance service for most cities in the state. And again, failed miserably. So one of the things that they encourage right now, and there's 7 pages of it, is to form an enterprise risk management team consisting of myself, the Public Works Director, and a member of the City Council, and I have a crew that works on works and stuff like that too, that I've been calling on lately. So that we can go around and examine all of the city's holdings and determine risks that may exist. For example, the gaping hole in the parking lot. that sort of thing, prioritize them and get them on the to-do list so that we can get them taken care of. Apparently, if they are on a to-do list like that, there is, because insurance companies realize that the cities don't necessarily always have the money to do everything at once.
Right.
Once it's on the list, you are covered for liability to a certain extent, as long as you're making efforts to get down that list and get those things done, because they're based on.
So we want to get a list made.
Correct. That's what we want to do. And we also will get into the rest of it. There's more.
Okay.
But that's the biggie right now.
So we're just going to have some scheduled times to get together?
Yes, we do. We need to do that. Now, is there anybody else that would like to volunteer? I didn't think so.
All right. I would entertain a motion to accept Duke's appointment to the City Enterprise Risk Management Team.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? You can.
Yeah, right.
Duke, you've been appointed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for doing
Thank you for doing it.
That's what you get for not asking first, right?
That's exactly right. Consideration of adoption of floor plan development permits. Tell us about that.
As part of the FEMA review, and the fact that we all know that the FEMA flood map is being revised, we anticipate it will be adopted in September sometime. And the audit that pointed out the fact that the city didn't even have a permit for people to apply to do work, development of any kind in the floodplain zone. So they said, well, you need to at least have a permit. So I developed the permits worked with Amanda, and we put together a permit overview, meaning what it was for, describing to a piece of paper we could give to somebody to say this is what it's about. Okay. The floodplain development permit, a FEMA construction cost affidavit, which is also required, a floodplain development permit, office use only, which is information that the city is required to maintain at all times. And then the operating procedures for processing the permit all together. So that's what is in your packet. Those have all been developed and would end up being in the how-to book for Green City on how to do things when it comes to floodplain development.
And you think the map will be ready in September?
The map will likely be ready in September, which means that we have to be ready before then, because we'll have to do all the hearings and the CAC has already considered it. I believe, aren't we done to make recommendation?
Not on the current language.
Okay, it'll have to go back to the CAC. The DLCD and FEMA made some changes, and so I'm in the process of updating that right now.
Okay.
And then that will have to go back to the CAC and back to the Planning Commission.
Is their map so detailed as that we can tell who is in it, what properties are in the floodplain, which ones are not?
There are maps available online.
Right.
They're searchable by address. And you're gonna, if you need to know, I mean, when we do our research, when a permit comes in, a permit request comes in for development, not necessarily land subdivision. It'll happen for that too, but that's a different way. But I mean, for development, they would come in and, like an example, this condition, I mean, this variance that was just discussed. If that had been in the floodplain, then we would require them to do certain things.
So it'll be part of our process to look up who's in the floodplain every time we get a permit request.
Right. And if we can't figure it out from the materials that they're providing us, then we.
All right. Yeah, just another layer, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Right.
However, part of that is setting fees, which is the next thing on the agenda. I would like you to approve those permits for me. We need to have that action actually
Okay.
taken. If anybody has any questions.
Right, I would entertain
about
a
it.
motion to accept the initial permit forms that Jamie has put together for us, which I'm assuming that later dates may have to be changed if things change with the coverage.
That was a motion?
That was a motion.
I'll second.
Any
No,
further?
you can't make a motion.
No. Okay, then I'll make
Oh,
his motion.
Sorry.
What he
I
said.
said I entertained a motion.
Yeah, you said you'd entertain a motion.
Right.
Oh, okay, well,
Yeah, okay.
it's been entertained then.
There you go. All right. All in favor?
Who is the second?
Yeah,
Thank you.
3 or 4?
yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you very much. All right, a resolution for setting fees for insurance of floodplain development permits. Whereas in City Code Title 15, Chapter 153, entitled Flood Damage Prevention, Section 35, requires a development permit to be obtained before construction or development begins within an area of special flood hazard, and whereas Dune City Code Title 15, Chapter 151.024 provides that permit fee shall be accessed in accordance with the provision of this section 151.024, or shall be set forth in the fee schedule adopted by Dune City Council. And whereas no fee schedule has ever been adopted by the city, and with regard to permits issued in conjunction with floodplain development, and whereas the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, the Oregon Division of Land Conservation and Development, DLCD, are requiring actions to be taken by the city and have not necessarily been done in the past that require significant time, investment, and record keeping associated with the development of lands located within the area designated as floodplain by FEMA, and whereas the city desires to be reimbursed for time and resources committed by staff in the completion of the actions being requested by FEMA and DLCD. Now, therefore, being resolved by the City Council that the City of Dune City that the following fees will be added to the permit fee schedule of Dune City. A, floodplain development permit overview, $35. B, floodplain development permit, $150. C, floodplain development permit substantial improvement review, $50. Number 2, this resolution takes effect immediately upon adoption. This resolution, okay.
I move approval of resolution series 2019 number 8.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, resolution passes. Resolution adopting enterprise risk management policy rules and procedures.
And I'm sure you've all read every word of this.
Of course. Actually, I called Duke and he read it to me. Whereas Dune City desires to promote a safe and productive work environment for the citizens and the staff that focuses on early identification of all risk exposures, prevention, training, mitigation through progressive risk management, and whereas Dune City's insurance company, City County Insurance Services, recommends cities adopt enterprise risk management policy, rules and procedures as part of each city's efforts to reduce claims, and whereas enterprise city risk management will enhance the ability of the city to manage its business and financial risk. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Dune City that, one, the enterprise risk management policy, rules and procedures attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated by reference herein is hereby adopted. Number two, the resolution takes effect immediately upon adoption. I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution Series 219, number 9.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Please.
Just a question. This material, Jamie, came from where?
CIS.
This is just directly from what they expect us to do?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, Resolution Series 2019, number 9, also passes. Resolution adopting City of Dune City Cyber Security Policy.
This one has really come to light recently.
Yeah,
The city has had lots of policy with regard to protecting its records, but not protecting its records through its computer
yes.
systems. And so this is now bringing the city's policies and procedures up to date with what's going on in the world today. And of course, it's another thing that they dinged us on because we didn't have one.
Sure. A resolution adopting the City of Dune City Cyber Security Policy. Whereas Dune City recognizes that information and the protection of information is required to serve our citizens and meet the city's obligations. And whereas Dune City desires to ensure appropriate measures are implemented to protect our citizens' information and to clearly communicate the city's security objectives and guidelines to minimize the risk of internal and external threats while taking advantage of the opportunities that promote our objectives. Whereas all Oregon public entities must comply with Oregon Identification Theft Protection Act ORS 646.A.600 to 628 and further ORS 646A.622D requires the implementation of cyber security program. And whereas failure to comply may result in failure to obtain organizational objectives, legal action, fines, and penalties. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Dune City that, number one, the City of Dune City Cyber Security Policy attached here to as Exhibit A and incorporated by reference herein is hereby adopted. This, number two, this resolution takes effect immediately upon adoption. I would entertain a motion to pass Resolution Series 2019, number 10.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Number 10 passes as well.
May I ask a question of Jamie?
Sure.
It seems to me, Jamie, like we just did the easy part.
Yes. It's like
You noticed that?
absolutely right.
Yes, we did.
And I have to tell you, it feels very much like I've spent most of the last month and a half writing policies that I've had no time to implement.
That's what I was going to ask.
That's what it's feeling like.
Yeah.
New staff is getting up to speed, and so it's a little more relaxed. I don't have to stand over the permit department, for example, to make sure everything's, because she's catching on and she's doing a good job. But yes, it isn't going to be easy.
Yep.
It will be a matter of identifying changes in behavior and correcting those and making sure that we're keeping a close eye on everything.
And implementation clearly is a process that's going to take some time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, we have a request from Planning Commission to pursue an ordinance regarding outdoor lighting.
Yes,
Come on up. Come on down.
come on down, barbecue.
You do have a copy of the letter from the planning commission in your packets.
We've become aware on the planning commission of how one person's thoughts can be an anathema to their neighbor. And this is particularly true in regards to lighting. That my desire, for instance, to have a safe and well-lit home might conflict with my neighbor's desire to have a dark sky suitable for looking at stars. And since this is a situation where two neighbors, need some adjudication, we thought it might be appropriate for the city to get in front of the issue. Certainly, we've seen that Florence has a lighting ordinance. In Hawaii, they found it very important to have lighting ordinances to protect wildlife. And so we thought, well, instead of waiting until we had a problem in this area, if the city council would ask the planning commission to work in this area, we would be happy to do so. But we wanted to get your guidance before we did it.
I remember a couple of years ago when PUD started using the LED lights, that we got some complaints because they were so much more brighter than a normal light.
I think it's a great idea to take a look at it.
Great. Anything else?
We would need you to actually direct by vote
Right.
the action so that they can
Any
move
other,
forward.
any other questions? Anybody? All right, I would entertain a motion to ask the planning commission to delve into coming up with an ordinance on outdoor lighting in the city of Genesee.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none?
Thank you.
So direct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have as I understand it, Jamie, we have a dead tree back on our property here that needs to be removed,
Part of it is dead. It hasn't completely died yet.
but it's working on it.
But it's, oh yes, it's right. It's the one that is hitting the roof over here on this side. And the top part of the tree is dead.
I assume you're asking us because of the cost
Correct.
is above your signature level.
Yes.
Any questions for Jamie on this? It's, if I remember the positioning, it also, I mean, if the tree comes down, it has the possibility of hitting neighbors, is that correct?
Yes.
And
In addition
us.
to us.
So, but as long as it doesn't do it on Wednesday night about 6.
Well, it's easy to see when you drove in that top half of the old spruce tree's dead. It's
Yeah.
definitely something.
Gotta love spruce trees. Yeah.
I mean,
In the past, when the city has trimmed that tree, we faced the wrath of the neighbor who thought it was his. I did talk to him. He recognizes that it is not his tree. It's on our property, but I did consult with him, and he's okay with it, so we're not gonna get that fight.
All right.
I'll make a motion to have it removed.
Second.
Third. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none? Yeah, go for it. Consideration for financial review by audit agreement letter.
Time, it's that time again.
It is.
Audit time.
Yep.
I received the agreement. I don't think it's in your packet unless I gave it to you later.
That is.
On the dais. What's on the dais?
Yeah, we got it.
All right, good.
The WW.
I think it's very similar to last year. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. I just got it.
Just shows you we're in the wrong business. And if I remember right, we're pretty well, we have very limited people to choose from on the coast.
That's correct.
We're trying to get these done. I'd entertain a motion to accept to allow Jamie to enter into the agreement letter with our financial audit review team.
So moved. Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any? So it passed. No executive session. Old business, consideration of plan for replacement of water meters by the radio. I'm tired of this one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I came up with a plan,
Excellent.
basically the 10-year plan,
10 years ago.
spreading it out. It occurred to me, based on discussions that Councilor Mellon brought forward, that the meters, I can do a sort by meter and figure out which ones were the oldest ones.
Oh, that's good.
And do it that way. So, and, you know, the first year it would be mostly getting software in anyway, and
Sure.
having the people who are waiting to put in their systems and building their houses pay for the new meter rather than an old meter.
Rather than the old one going in and redoing it.
Right.
Discussion.
Get her done.
I'm sorry, could I ask for a clarification?
Absolutely.
On what it is what exactly are we voting on at this point?
The plan for,
Just the plan.
The
You
plan
haven't told me
for-
which company to go
Right,
with yet.
that's where I was,
So-
what I was wondering.
just the plan.
Okay, thank you.
For her.
And if you feel compelled or moved to tell me which company to go for,
We'd love to hear it.
I have an opinion, but this is not the time to go into that. We'll get to it, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Or you will.
you want me to put it on
Yeah.
the next agenda?
Yeah.
let's get this done, yeah.
I move
Yeah.
approval of the conversion plan.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, I think it's passed, Jamie. I think that's a good way to take a look at it. And if you would put it, let's get this over with, get it in our next meeting and see if we can't come to kill this thing for once and for all. I probably had a report, but at this length, I just forgot what it was all about. Other than the fact that, for those of you that got to enjoy Darlene's fireworks display on the 6th of July, it was excellent. They've done, continue to do a great job. I mean, they are my neighbors, but their business is booming, no pun intended. And, they've done a really good job with what they're doing, and I think it's been a great asset to our community since they've moved in and taken that place over. Community Center report.
More of a request. Jamie, what do you think about us stepping up and again, if we have somebody local come in and mow our grass a little more regular? I don't have a lawnmower anymore myself, so.
You mean hiring somebody?
Yeah, do you think
On a
that's in the
regular
realm or?
basis? Well, I did have somebody that was coming in on a regular basis, but it was once a month. Well, that's all we needed.
Yeah, well, since we got the next door and stuff. you know.
And just to, that one over there, just to let you know, the reason it has recently been cut is because Jaslyn, our permit tech's husband, came over and did it.
Oh.
So,
Oh,
well, he wants to get paid for it.
Oh,
I got a mower you can use, too.
I wasn't going that way.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood.
I wasn't where you were headed. I already volunteered for one thing.
All right, all right.
I will get a hold of Robert and tell him if he can't get us on the schedule twice a month during the
Yeah, I
summer,
think twice, I
then I'll
think we
find
should.
somebody else.
Okay.
Maybe the fellow out front on the
Oh, yeah.
pavement by the door.
I have a call into the attorney to find out what I am allowed to say. I do not think I'm allowed to kick them off.
Oh,
probably the case.
So he could mow grass.
that's right.
Perhaps. But we don't have a lawnmower either, so.
Bob will lend it to
Whatever
you.
happened to
I'm sorry?
Missouri?
It's a Bob will lend it to you.
Exactly.
Huh?
Missouri?
Yeah. That doesn't count anymore, no.
Down, oh, old days.
Yeah. Water quality report. Did Susan turn that in?
No, I didn't get anything from Susan, I didn't get anything from anybody, including the one that was sent off for testing in, what was it, May, Jerry?
Yeah.
And
By the
so-
way, we haven't had any recordings for the water sample since 2016.
They have not been updated on the.
So we're not in compliance.
Input into the
We
computer.
do the work and then it goes, disappears once it's dissolved.
Yeah.
You don't have it?
Another question about the water meters. Why do they need these new water meters and who pays for it?
It's part of the administration fees that you pay for the water. That's part of what we pay for. And it's so that we get accurate meter readings from everybody who has a meter.
I mean, you don't get them now?
Because it's state water.
No.
That's what it started.
Why wouldn't you give somebody a job to go around and read them? Surely that would be more cost effective than...
It would if we weren't paying 40% to PERS on top of everything else. That's the bottom line. 30% going for taxes and 40% for PERS, so you're basically paying for two people to hire one person to do your job. But we do have one meter who does go out once a year. This way, I could drive around in a matter of 15 minutes in town, or somebody could drive around for 15 minutes in town and have all the meter readings and come back and download it in the computer, and the computer does all the math. I don't have to sit there for hours on end and do all
Does
the math.
everyone in Dune City have a meter?
Only those who take under the Dune City water right, shared domestic water supply program. It's about 200.
My question is, who will pay for these meters? Will the city pay for them?
We already have the money through the administration fees. That was built into the administration fees for meter replacement as it was needed.
Let's see. So we're not gonna pay another $250,000?
No. No, but just like you did for your meter, the people that are building a new house and getting a new meter, they will have to pay the fee that you paid.
Got it.
Sounds like a good idea.
Public Works Maintenance Supervisor, your report.
You want anything to report? I'm applying for a grant
Good.
to try and correct this line of sight at Buckskin Bob and Parkway Drive. Because we've had about 6 accidents there.
Wow.
I do have some talk, but I don't know whether we can talk about it now or not.
Well, we haven't talked about it, and so don't you do anything that's going to get me in trouble.
Well, I'd like to talk about Levitt Loop, so I can get going.
Oh, okay.
And I'd like them to be involved in it, I mean.
Well, they are able to, even though it's not an agendized item, they are able to vote on some issues, not everything. So if you
I don't
want
know
to
what needs
explain
vote,
the
but
situation.
Just feedback. Okay, Levitt Loop. We have an ongoing deal there with flooding issues and flooding out one fella. I went in and took out a tree, took out a bunch of brush, cleaned off the side of the road to try to get back a drainage ditch, opened up a culvert so that water could actually flow where it was kind of designed for to leave. And I need to get back over there and finish it. But I've dragged my feet on it because, to be honest, I'm getting tired of getting yelled at. I mean, it's, no matter what I do, it seems to be wrong. But I want to go back in and establish this bar ditch on the side of the road. It's at the, you go in Levitt and it's right on where it makes its left-hand corner. You're going down the one-way road. Right around that bend is where all this work is taking place. And I want to excavate it out and put in this big rock, just like I did on Keishley Arm, and fill this ditch full of big rock to get the water to run in that and down the culvert. Mainly that way it's safe, cars can still drive over there, there's no big ditch for anybody to fall in. And in Keishley, it seems to be working quite well. No water is escaping or going anywhere, it keeps erosion down. And in doing what I've done, I seem to have made the fella that was complaining, yelling lawsuit, kind of happy because we did knock down the water going on his place pretty good. He's pushing me for wanting some culverts under his roads and do some other stuff, but I've tried to explain to him that I don't feel that it's gonna do us any good. There's no ditch on the other side of the road for me to pick up this water. It's drainage from the neighbor's house, their parking lot, you know, and nothing I can do about that, you know. But anyway, I'm going to put in this rock and clean it up and try to make it look halfway decent. But we've had some complaints because here again, I went in, took all this brush out that's encroaching on the road, and people are not liking it. Like, they want it grown in, you know. So like I said, I've dragged my feet for quite a while on it because I've just been kind of nervous of what to do. But Jamie's been pushing me to do this, but I feel that some of these things really kind of need some guidance and some backing from you guys on, you know, just what I'm doing.
He wants somebody to have his back.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
That's what it amounts to.
I spend more time getting yelled at than, you know.
What should our move be, Jamie?
What?
What should we do? I mean, short of.
Well, I really don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know people who live on Levitt Loop, that.
Well, my thing is poor Jamie and I, we talk about these things and I try to come up with a solution. But that's her and I. There's gotta be some way to set up all this work that needs to be done to where at least I got somebody to go to and talk to in some kind of a meeting with the road, the infrastructure here of the city, to tell you what we need to do, and somebody to kind of say yay, nay, or, you know, some more involvement than me being the one making decisions and doing the work, and I feel like, damn, this goes wrong, I'm in trouble.
Well, I think what will happen is as Sheldon has mentioned, is we'll bring it up at the goal setting meeting. But again, being in a small community such as we are, the operation and what you're talking about is Jamie's call. So I'm not sure that the way that we're set up in a municipality that the council is the one to do that. That's really sits at her desk unless there is ordinances that need to be involved, unless there's nasty neighbors, that sort of thing. Absolutely, we can help with that sort of thing. But let's sit down. I think our goal setting meeting on the 24th might be a good area, and we can thrash around and talk about some of the things that we've experienced or how we might help in that area, that something might be able to be set up.
I think I know in the past, I mean, we've run into a lot of things, and I can't blame Jamie at all. She gets just like me, kind of frustrated, throws her hands up. I mean, what do we do? Because we make a decision, you know, it may not be.
I think we need to, those folks, whenever that comes up, direct them to come to council meeting and sit there and direct their problem to us here, and then it gets into our court.
Yeah.
And we can address it then, you see.
But, yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that would help a lot too would be to get in front of them instead of, and I know there's a lot of emergency work, but if you could notify the neighbors and say, Dune City Code says we have to have this view where I can notify them, and they know you're coming, and then all of a sudden there's not somebody standing in what they consider their front yard with a chainsaw. That makes everybody mad.
Well, you know, and we try to do that, but like in this deal, I mean, we had a serious flooding issue going on with this fella, and this guy's jumping up and down and wanted action. It's like, okay, we gotta do something.
I understand that.
You know, and, you know, I tried to go and notify people, nobody was home.
Yeah.
You know?
What you can do, you know, I think directing into us and getting it to where
yes,
it's on our shoulders is the way to handle that.
Well, I think that would work. You'd get more community involvement is what I see. These people complain, but yet they don't want to come down here.
Right.
You know, I mean, somehow, yeah.
I think we should just clarify, because Mayor Forsyth, you were just saying that this is really Jamie's realm, and then Councilor Wells was saying it could be brought to the council, and clearly we want to be responsive to the community's issues and concerns. At the same time, the council doesn't want to be micromanaging the issues of the city. So I'm not quite sure where that falls, but
Exactly.
I think first stop is Jamie, I think, as you said.
Well, and what we're talking about is not the ones that we plan for. When we plan for it, it comes here.
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can't write a check for $150,000 without your
Well,
approval.
you
So
could,
it comes here,
You would look bad.
but we're talking about emergency situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the
That's where it
only
comes
thing
from.
left then is just to go, you know, I'm here to do this emergency, got a problem, I think they need to address it.
Well, I guarantee you, if I had hired a contractor to do it and not had a volunteer doing it,
Yeah,
the contractor would
oh, yeah.
ignore it,
Yeah.
Totally.
you know?
What do you have on emergency services, Jamie?
The one thing that I do need you guys to do, because I did not get it on the agenda, was that it's time to renew whoever is going to be the WeLog representative and who is the backup representative on WeLog. The backup in the past was Bob Orr.
I haven't done a lot of backing up lately.
No.
No.
I'm done volunteering for tonight.
Isn't it your night, Duke?
No, it's not my night.
They meet once a month.
Yeah.
It is the third Monday of the month at 10 o'clock in the morning, most of the time at the fire station in town. And it's half hour to an hour. It rarely goes longer than that.
So are you suggesting you don't want to be that part of that?
Oh, no, I think I have to,
Yeah.
because I'm the one that has to deal with emergency services at the state level. But a backup, it would be nice if someone else were available to at least come once in a while and hear what's going on, or,
Sounds like
call
Bob
me and
hasn't
say,
been
hey,
doing
let's
his
talk
back.
about what's happening.
Sounds like Bob hasn't been doing his back.
Well, I went once.
Yeah, he went once.
Oh, you need to go once more.
That's right. And it'll be from time to time.
But 10 o'clock though, is during the school year.
It's a really
That's
tough
different.
time for me.
Well, then
Yeah.
I'll do the off-season, so we can just.
Oh, okay.
You can just do Bob.
Tag time.
Bob.
Yeah.
Just-
Bob.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, except he spells his name backwards for mine. So.
All right, thank you.
All right. City administration reports, planning, staff reports. I read them.
Did you read them? Were there any questions about the staff report? Seems to me like I wrote some stuff that was kind of important.
Didn't seem like you were quite busy though.
I'd say something, but I won't. Oh, it's the usual stuff, the audits, the insurance services. I did go to Salem on June 19th, make the presentation for the grant for Rebecca's Trail. Received notification that we have succeeded the first hurdle, but now it goes to the Parks Commission for consideration at their board meeting in September. The building codes division issue, I don't know, did I send everybody the update that I got? Probably not, okay. Lane Council of Governments, did we make a copy of it and give it to them? Oh, okay. The building codes issue, the legislature closed without dealing with it, so we are all sitting waiting for the next step. It is anticipated that BCD will again seek to enforce its current rules, meaning that we would need to make a decision at that point whether to hire a building official or turn the program over to Lane County or to fight in court. Or
We
any
can't hire.
combination of
We
those.
went through that one, we don't have the money to hire somebody, so.
So,
Yeah,
All right.
so that's something that will be coming as soon as I know a little bit more, when
Okay.
when it actually pushes it.
Sounds like.
I did participate in a teleconference with a
Yeah.
To fight.
team of attorneys regarding the water issue. The biggest problem is ensuring the accuracy of the points of diversion. So that's, I'm working on that now. It's a very slow process. I've been able to make some progress, but anyway. The other thing is, because it has already had one change, it's already been a transfer, you're usually not allowed to do another transfer. And so she's not sure what this will look like when we have to put the new points of diversion on there, because that would still be another transfer. And so she's not sure. And what may have to occur is that we split off some and seek certification of, say, 25 or 50 of those points of diversions, get that resolved, and then go and do some more beyond that. So we're looking at that. I have not talked to her about actually coming down here, because she does charge $250 an hour. So, but we may be able to do an session on the phone where you talk to her or something, if you are interested in that. Oh, and an ordinance, a draft ordinance has been submitted to our attorneys for review regarding disposal of the unimproved roadways in Silver's Lake Club Plat.
Super.
I did want to make sure everybody knows that there have been some reports of fuel thefts in the Dune City area, particularly the Westlake area. So I urge everybody to be vigilant and report any suspicious activity to law enforcement.
Is that it?
That's it, thank you.
Good of the order.
Nope.
Tom? No. Tired. Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What to say about that?
Yeah. All right, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 8:17.
Good.